Did I? Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm here. We already had some turkey. It's a good start.
We just had fried turkey with Daggum. That's good.
Yeah,
it was great.
It was amazing.
You set the bar so high last time jumping out of planes. Now you're having turkey.
I know. It's like, listen, a fried turkey's pretty good, but I expect a zip line coming in here soon.
If you're not already excited about Thanksgiving, you are wrong. And that's why we're going to do it today. We're going to do it tomorrow. That's why I'm so offended by the PETA flyer that I got in my office this morning.
He can't stop talking about this.
No, they asked about Tofurkey Day. This is from PETA. They said turkeys are social, intelligent, and playful birds.
They are.
But every year, 45 million of them are slaughtered for Thanksgiving alone. They forgot to say they're yummy.
We may have a surprise for you, pal. Okay,
Listen,
number one.
Don't tempt us, Pete. Don't tempt us.
Number two, there are some on the left who are actually saying, stop talking about politics, not just next Thursday, but now. You have to basically stop for the rest of the year. Don't talk about it at the holidays. We're going to get into it later in the show. They want everyone to calm down.
But safe space.
Go get your pillow.
You're triggering
Trump
people left and right.
Yeah. I can't handle it. Can't we just, the blue wave wasn't really as big as I thought.
Oh, Pete's excited. He's really pumped for the show now. We've got a lot of news to get to. And the president, he's been, beaten up a little bit by the mainstream media this week on the idea that he stopped talking about the caravan, allegedly, after the midterms. Well, he went on a bit of a tweet storm saying, nope, still talking about it, and it is still a critical issue.
That's right. This is a tweet he sent out yesterday. It said, from the president, isn't it ironic that large caravans of people are marching to our border wanting U.S. asylum because they're fearful of being in their country, yet they're proudly waving their own country's flag? Can this be possible? Yes, because it's all a big con, and the American taxpayer is paying
and
for it.
Jedediah, what the context right now is, the mayor in Tijuana is asking for help from the Mexican government because he says part of the caravan has is getting close to his city, and it's getting violent. He needs help to push back. He's worried about security. And it's interesting because I was watching a little bit of Tucker last night, and he was saying, when the president here says, I'm worried about the caravan, everyone says, oh, you're stirring up things. You're exaggerating the problem. You're a racist. When the mayor of Tijuana says, hey, it's getting violent. This is a problem. I need help. It's fine. It's like, oh, okay, he's not a racist.
He's not stirring up anything. This is a problem that's been existing for a really, really long time. In fact, Donald Trump should be talking about it more. I mean, the fact that this border is not secure, how many Republicans now for how many years have been saying border security, border security, border security, and nobody does anything about it? This is an important issue. Immigration is one of the leading issues that drives people to the polls to vote. We just saw that again with the midterms. They have to do something about it. One thing I will say, though, don't just talk about it prior to an election. Keep the conversation going and actually do something to effectuate change where people in this country feel that the laws of the country are respected as they are in many countries around the world.
It's so ridiculous that the media was trying to point out at the election that Trump hasn't been talking about the caravan. This is the guy that was talking about immigration before anyone was talking about it.
That's true.
And making it a centerpiece of his campaign.
It's one of the reasons he won was because he
100%.
Made immigration a centerpiece.
And they also said, well, this caravan isn't really real. Well, there's about 2,000 in Tijuana, and they say estimated up to 10,000 possibly massing there, maybe to come in legally. Some have said they want to bum rush the border. We don't really know, but the president's prepared for it.
I want to bet that if the president spent the last week talking about the caravan after the election, many in the media would be saying, why is he still talking about the caravan? I thought that was a pre-election issue. He stops talking about it a little bit to talk about other issues, national security. He talked a little bit about Mueller. Now he's not talking about the caravan.
Yeah.
Either way, he's going to get criticized. But as you saw in the tweets, he's saying it's a serious issue. As Pete said, he talked about it way in the campaign before some of his fellow Republicans were talking about it. Forget about the Democrats.
And the way they were talking about it was comprehensive immigration reform, which is effectively amnesty.
Which effectively means that you don't get the border security. You wind up giving and giving and giving in, and then the border security, which is, arguably the most important measure, never happens. So, listen, Donald Trump did make this issue front and center. As I've said many times, this is one of the reasons he won. He shouldn't forget that. And border security matters to people all over this country. And frankly, border security matters to people across party lines, too. I know a lot of Democrats that care deeply about this issue because they care about the security and safety of the country and making sure that who's coming in here has been verified, has been checked out. That is an important part of a secure democracy.
When you understand that, that's why you say things like concertina wire can be beautiful. Because it actually means you're finally enforcing a border that should matter.
There are Democrats like Chuck Schumer who used to talk about cracking down on illegal immigration. Not so much anymore. They don't want to talk about that. They also don't want to talk about some big losses they've had in some big states like Georgia and Florida in the gubernatorial battles. Stacey Abrams, a Democratic candidate, she has been claiming for days now that there was voter suppression, and that may be why she was behind. She was trying to drag this out and try and force either a recount or some sort of a legal challenge she was preparing. Well, yesterday, she finally came out and said, okay, Brian Kemp, the Republican, is going to win this. I'm not going to win. this is a concession speech, but I'm not really conceding.
To watch an elected official who claims to represent the people in this state baldly pin his hopes for election on the suppression of the people's democratic right to vote has been truly appalling. So let's be clear. This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. More than 1 million citizens found their names stripped from the rolls by the Secretary of State. We will be filing a major federal lawsuit against the state of Georgia.
Oftentimes, our producers really get it right. See that right there on the banner? Abrams concedes a
Georgia.
gubernatorial race. Sort of.
Sort of.
Sort of. That was not a concession speech.
No.
That was I'm really angry. I thought I was going to win this. All the celebrities came to town for me, Oprah and Will Ferrell and John Legend, but I still lost, and there's no pathway to victory. So I'm going to accuse my opponent of being racist, of voter suppression, instead of being graceful and saying, hey, I lost.
She is gathering evidence. We should point out that there were super long lines in counties, cities, areas where there were more black voters. She claims that people were waiting in line for several hours compared to areas where there were more white voters that helped Brian Kemp. This is her allegation.
No, I've read the
look at it, that there was voter suppression and that a lot of people were taken off the rolls altogether because of signature problems. Some of that may have been legitimate. Maybe there were people who were trying to vote who shouldn't legally vote. So we should look at it.
I'd rather have that than Brenda Snipes, who's got people on her voter rolls who've been dead for 100 years. Like, pay attention to your voter rolls should be important. And Brian Kemp, who was the Secretary of State, did that.
Should be able to vote. You would agree?
Yes, 100%. But Abrams lost by a very large margin.
You think I don't want people to vote?
He wants people to vote.
I didn't say that.
Well, yeah, but you have to point out that this is a pattern now, right? This would be one thing if you were having this conversation about voter suppression and Georgia was an isolated incident. This is the new, as I've said before, the mantra of the Democratic Party. Every time there's an election now and they lose, they card out, oh, they cheated, they didn't play fair, that's why I lost. Sometimes you just lose. Yeah. You just lose. You put up a good fight and you just lose.
And it wasn't just Stacey Abrams. We'll point out other big high-profile races. Andrew Gillum in Florida, who also has not conceded and is too far behind to come back.
Huge disparity.
Beto O'Rourke in Texas, he did concede, but he may run for president after losing anyway. So big, high-profile Democrats trying to keep the spotlight on them.
We went from Georgia. You just mentioned Florida, big gubernatorial battle. The Republican clearly has won there, though the Democrat Gillum has not conceded. The Senate battle still rolling on as well. The manual recount is entering its second day.
Democratic Senator Bill Nelson's chances of holding on to his seat is slipping away as Republican challenger Rick Scott continues to secure his lead.
Our own Griff Jenkins live in Broward County, where hand-counted votes have been completed. Griff, update us.
That's right, guys. The hand recount is over, and so too are any chances of Senator Bill Nelson making a comeback. Let me take you inside here at Broward County, where they're getting ready to recount some other races. But the journalists inside of Florida, the Florida journalists who have covered Senator Nelson's political career for years, they are virtually writing his political obituary at this very moment, because here in Broward County, it was the best chances of Nelson having a comeback. We were told there were 25,000 votes for Nelson that were not counted because the machines missed them. Turns out that's not true. And yesterday, out of 31,000 over and under votes, only 447 could possibly go Nelson's way. Now, the only real question left here in Broward is whether or not the election supervisor, Dr. Brenda Snipes, who has had a series of errors and a lot of accusations about it, whether she'll even keep her job after this weekend and into next week. I asked her yesterday how things are going. Here's what she had to say.
Things are going as we planned it. We have all these people here, and they are willing to stay until we get it all done.
Are you pleased that you got the hand count at least sorted early?
Sure.
Same setup.
Absolutely.
Now, the recount is statewide, all 67 counties, but Broward was the best chance, and Nelson's math doesn't match up. We should have some numbers here at some point this morning, but the official numbers for the recount will come out tomorrow at 12 noon deadline. Guys?
All right. Griff Jenkins, we'll get back
Griff.
to his news warrants. How about that from Brenda Snipes? Was that a little bit of truth serum? It's going exactly as we planned.
Things are going as we planned it. What does that mean? Mistakes, votes. Where are the votes?
You know,
I'm just saying.
What's really interesting to me, too, is how exciting it is to vote in Florida all the time. You know, I vote in New York, where the person I vote for usually loses instantaneously. But Florida, there's always so much excitement. There's always so much going on. It's got to be a thrill if you're out there and you get to vote in these elections.
A lot of excitement in the show today. We got a lot of other headlines as well.
That's right. Go ahead,
President.
We are turning now to your headlines. President Trump is heading to California today to visit victims of the devastating wildfires. At least 74 people are dead, 71 alone in the North's Camp Fire. More than 1,000 others are still missing. Residents are now facing a new threat as hazardous smoke is smothering the state. Millions of people are forced to wear masks amid the dirtiest air quality levels in the world. In Southern California, more evacuees are returning home. Vice President Mike Pence is vowing that the U.S. will hold Jamal Khashoggi's murderers accountable. The CIA reportedly determined that the Saudi crown prince ordered the journalist's assassination. Mohammed bin Salman has denied having any role in Khashoggi's death. This week, the U.S. government announced sanctions on 17 Saudi officials over the incident. Senator Mitch McConnell believes the clock will run out on passing criminal justice reform this term. The majority leader telling the president that the First Step Act is unlikely to come up for vote before session ends in December, according to the New York Times. McConnell reportedly blamed crucial funding issues that need to be discussed first.
The president's advisors are not happy.
Yeah, and those are your headlines.
By the way, we just got word from the White House the president is preparing to leave for California. We didn't know exactly what time he was going to leave. It should be in the next few minutes, so if we get some live video or any tape from him, we'll get to that quickly. Meanwhile, the president has a new warning for the press.
You have to act with respect. You're in the White House. We always have the option of just leaving. People aren't being treated properly. We always have the right to leave.
The president's former campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, here to react next.
And this school may be home to the Patriots, but one teacher says he lost his job because of his patriotism.
We always have the option of just leaving. You know, if we feel that things aren't being treated properly, that people aren't being treated properly, we always have the right to leave. I've instructed my people, when they're not treated properly, you have the right to just leave anytime you want.
I was the president yesterday in the Oval Office, and President Trump sitting down for an exclusive interview with our own Chris Wallace and warning the media he and his staff will leave press conferences if they are disrespected, and promising new rules for the press to ensure good decorum.
This after last week's sparring match, you might say, between the president and some members of the media.
Here to weigh in, former Trump campaign manager and author of the upcoming book, Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State is Undermining the Presidency, Corey Lewandowski is with us. Corey, welcome to the show. What do you think about this idea of creating new rules? What do you think these new rules could look like?
Well, I think the rules are very important because we've seen, unfortunately, there are people in the press who don't want to report the stories. They want to be the stories. So I think what the president's team is going to do is they're going to say something simple like, you can only ask a question when called on. There will be a limited number of questions that each member of the press could ask. And look, I go back to the individuals like Chris Wallace, who's covered the press, the president for a long time, who's talked about how crazy it has become inside that press room. I look at Major Garrett of CBS News, who said he was handed the microphone one day and the president said, not you, give it to somebody else. And he did, because that's the decorum that should take place inside the White House. And those rules, unfortunately, have to be put in place because some people just won't follow them.
Why by the so-called mainstream press, then, is it confused as they're obstructing the First Amendment? They're saying, no, free speech. They accuse the White House of shutting down free speech. Talk to our viewers about the difference between what the White House is doing and that idea.
Well, and look, to be clear, the judge yesterday in D.C. ruled nothing on the relationship of free speech. The only reason a press pass was reissued to the CNN individual was because they said he wasn't given due process. But there is no free speech for individuals to cover the White House. Let's be very clear about that. There is the freedom of the press to publish anything that they want to, but that doesn't mean they have the unabridged ability to ask any question they want in a derogatory manner or in a manner that isn't appropriate. So what this president and his team are doing is saying, we're going to lay out a series of rules that everybody understands what those rules are, and if you don't follow the rules, you won't be given the privilege and opportunity to come here and continue to ask questions. Someone else from your network will have to do that. And I think that's a very fair thing. Look, if this was a different president and a conservative media outlet treated Barack Obama the same way that the liberal media outlets attacked this president, there would be widespread outcry across the spectrum. But it's different because this president's a conservative.
But, Corey, how do you react to folks in the mainstream media who are sort of chuckling at the idea that this president is going to create rules of, quote-unquote, decorum?
Well, look, it's so simple. This president has made himself available to the media more so than any other president in modern history. He does 90-minute long press conferences.
I get that, but what about decorum?
Decorum, though.
Look, decorum is this. The president calls people out when they need to be called out. The American people elected a counterpuncher. And when he's attacked, he responds in kind. When you start a question with, I'm going to challenge you, Mr. President, and then inject your own thought process and not ask a thoughtful question, he has the right to fight back.
Right.
So he's a counterpuncher. He isn't someone who starts this.
Well, and
but he's
by the
willing to finish
way,
it.
he's the president and they're not. So that comes with something, too.
Well,
Okay,
there's
so you can
that
say
too,
whatever
of
you
course.
want.
But look, some of these members of the media think they are the president.
Exactly.
As you know.
That's
Right.
exactly
fair.
Corey
right.
Lewandowski, thanks for coming.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Corey.
Appreciate it.
Democratic hopeful in 2020, Eric Swalwell, he stirred up some controversy on social media last night with this message for gun owners. He said, quote, the government has nukes. He was talking about maybe taking away guns. Is that really what he was talking about? We're going to get into it. That warning not going over so well with Dan Bongino. He's here to respond next. Some quick headlines. Michael Avenatti's law firm is evicted from an office building in L.A. He apparently did not pay rent for 4 months. This comes just days after the famed attorney for Stormy Daniels was arrested on suspicion of domestic violence. He has denied the charge. The attorney for the woman charged with laundering a GoFundMe campaign for a homeless vet, meanwhile, is claiming his client is a victim. Kate McClure's lawyer admitting she was in on the initial plan to make up a story about the vet spending his last $20 on gas for her, but that she only did so to help him get more donations and was duped by her boyfriend and the vet to cash in on the $400,000 that was ultimately collected. Sounds like a whole lot of explaining.
Lot.
Sounds bad.
Plenty.
Yeah, not a good story.
All right, well, Eric Swalwell, a potential, so they say, 2020 candidate, facing scrutiny over an old op-ed, as an old op-ed resurfaces of him calling for a ban on certain guns.
Well, social media erupted in response with one user replying in part. So basically, Congressman Swalwell wants a war because that's what you would get.
The congressman responding with a tweet saying it would be a short war, my friend. The government has nukes, too many of them, but they're legit. I'm sure if we talked, we could find common ground to protect our families and communities. Here to react is Dan Bongino, NRA TV host, former Secret Service agent, and author of Spygate. Dan, what do you make of this tweeting? I don't understand for the life of me why people tweet stuff like this out, but what do you make of the tweet, and what do you think the reaction is to people at home who want their Second Amendment rights protected and are a little fearful of a government that could potentially get too powerful?
Oh my gosh, what do I think of that? I mean, this may be the single dumbest tweet in the history of the Twitters. I mean, who tweets this? No less a United States congressman. Now, just some background on this, though, Jedediah. Congressman Swalwell months ago had proposed the idea of legislation to confiscate firearms from legal gun owners, to take away weapons, and to do it. So there's actual background to this story. So the story came up again, and that's how he got in this back and forth. But, I mean, he wants to run for president in 2020. Like, what's his slogan going to be? Like, Swalwell 2020, we've got the nukes? I mean, this is the liberal mindset that we should genuflect in front of the power of the United States government. Now, just to be clear, no one actually believes Swalwell wants to nuke Americans, but still, it was really dumb to say it that way, and it does feed into the fears of a lot of gun owners that a lot of these government officials are just, you know, they're just out of control.
Yeah, as Dan suggested, for the record, the congressman later said he was being sarcastic, but obviously it raised a lot of eyebrows.
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, let's move on. Tijuana, the mayor there asking for this country's government, Mexico. He wants $4 million as the migrant caravan overwhelms his city. You know, Dan, when President Trump says, I'm worried about the caravan, the mainstream media, Democrats say he's exaggerating the problem. The mayor of Tijuana all of a sudden sees it coming and says, I need help. Give me $4 million. Is he a racist?
Yeah, it's incredible, right? I mean, you know, the media's been telling us the caravan doesn't exist. It's a figment of our imagination. Yet we keep seeing video. I mean, it's not doctored. It's not like some Adobe Creative Shop video where people just made it up. The caravan's real. Like, it's actually happening. There's a legitimate debate to be had on both sides about how this should work out when they get to the border. Obviously, they should enter via ports of entry, but saying it doesn't exist is absurd. And guys, listen, you know, chaos is not a brand. And the Democrats Democrats really need to get their arms around this. This is a serious issue to a lot of Americans. My wife is a legal immigrant to this country. So is her family. They did it the right way. Showing up outside of a port of entry and demanding United States citizenship as if it's some kind of a global right in a chaotic manner, climbing the fence, as we've seen some videos of. You know, this is not the way to ingratiate yourself to a country you want to become a citizen of, or say you want.
Yeah, it seems like an odd disposition if you want to come in for the right reasons. Well, let's go back to Capitol Hill for a second. House Republicans are saying they want to subpoena James Comey, get more information about his actions around 2016. James Comey tweeting this in response. He said, House Republicans can ask me anything they want, but I want the American people to watch. So let's have a public hearing. Truth is best served by transparency. Let me know when is convenient. So what do you make of his response and Republicans' attempts to get him to talk?
Oh, gosh, I am so frustrated by this guy. He wants transparency. Pete, you realize in July of 2016, when the investigation into the Trump team started, right, he was obligated to notify Congress quarterly about sensitive investigations. Now, just a question for the audience. You think an investigation into a major party presidential candidate was sensitive? I'm just going to throw that. You guys can all discuss, okay? I would say the answer is yes, but that's not what Comey did. He waited 8 months past the deadline to notify Congress, hid the investigation from them until March of 2017, the next year. So it is laughable, comical for Jim Comey to start talking about transparency now. And remember, this case was based on the dossier that he called salacious and unverified.
And yet they still used it for a FISA warrant and renewed it. Dan Bongino, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, guys.
All right, well, President Trump facing criticism for not spending Veterans Day at Arlington National Cemetery. This morning, he is responding to that.
And what do Democrats really want for Christmas? We've got the answer coming up next.
More Pete.
More Pete.
No, more social.
Well, it's starting to look at least a little bit like Christmas on 6th Avenue.
It is. The lights are up. Listen, I've already lodged my formal complaint. We shouldn't be skipping Thanksgiving and going straight to Christmas like easy people.
That's
Thanksgiving
true.
hasn't happened yet. It's a quintessential American holiday, so I'm just going to...
There's the turkey.
Thank you. Some people understand my plight. But you're right. I mean, the lights are up.
And it snowed
6th
this
Avenue.
week.
It
We
snowed
had
this
snow,
week.
so it was very Christmassy, winter wonderland.
Texas doesn't want to celebrate just yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Should we also skip politics altogether for the holidays?
You know, I used to be that person in my house that said no politics. My dad is very political, and he likes to sit down at the dinner table and, like, that's his moment to talk about the free market. And I'm always like, Dad, no. You know, but I think for him, he used to say this, you know, you get to do this on television. I don't get, this is my stage. So he, you know, you can't tell people to shut it down, but I think to try to make the holiday peaceful, you don't want people going at each other's throats.
Whoopi Goldberg can tell you to shut it down. And here she is in page 6 saying, quote, I want everybody to take a break from politics and enjoy their families, regardless of what your politics are. Just put it all away for 3 weeks and let's just make life good. Interesting idea, except that's sort of not what she does every single day.
Right.
She's trashing the president.
Exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, she has the platform, the microphone like we do, but people at home are like, wait a minute, Thanksgiving? Give me my mic. I want to talk about the free market.
She wants to stop.
Her friend on the left, Bill Maher, said pretty much the same.
Right.
You guys, you rabble out there, you stop talking about it because the temperature's a little high. We do it reasonable. Us elites, we do it right.
And it just so happens that they're all anti-Trump, the ones who talk about it. Yeah. But just let us do it.
Stop talking about it. I thought the midterm was supposed to make them feel better, though.
Maybe they should mix
Right?
the shows up a little bit, and Bill Maher should talk a little bit less about politics on air. I mean, he's saying, you know, you're exactly right. He's saying my show is my forum, and maybe he needs a break because he's so tired of talking about politics. Not everybody's sitting on a TV show doing this. They want to chat with their families about the things that matter to them.
Are you going to talk about politics around the Thanksgiving table, friends at
My dad will, for sure.
Or would you just put a little pause button on all of that?
I'm emailing right now, friends at Fox. I believe the left is tired of winning, so they can't handle it.
Let's ask Rick about it.
We could just talk about the weather, actually.
Yes. I think we should talk less about politics when we get more weather in the show.
There you go.
What do you think?
Not a bad idea, Rick.
A blocks, D blocks, the way the good old days were.
This sounds like a good career move.
I know. Jobs. I'm just like begging to hang on to a job right now. That's
I love
pretty
it.
much what's going on. All right, guys, let's talk a little weather out there. We had big weather this week with the big snowstorm across the east. Obviously, the fires that have turned so incredibly just devastating and sad out across across California. Here's your temps as you're waking up. It's really cold across the far northern plains. Behind that storm that brought all that kind of overachieving snow across parts of the Northeast, we're looking pretty good. We have a little bit of snow going across parts of the Central Plains. Out across the west, still dry in California right now, but take a look at what happens. By around Wednesday, we've got a really good shot at rain. This would be our first batch of rain coming in across Northern California. And for that campfire, that the fatality number is over 70 now, this would certainly be some great news. As far as travel goes, also on Wednesday, guys, the only problem will be out across the west, but we'll just be thankful to get that rain. The rest of the country looking good. All right, guys, back to you inside.
All right, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. We are turning now to your headlines. The search is intensifying for a veteran who disappeared from a San Francisco 49ers game. Authorities say Ian Powers got up in the fourth quarter to go to the bathroom and never returned.
He's the kindest, sweetest, most caring person that you could have ever met, and he always thinks everybody else first. He would never leave his girlfriend and his kids.
Powers was last seen in a video call with his girlfriend after the game. They were trying to meet up. His phone died, and Powers hasn't been heard from since. President Trump says he regrets not visiting Arlington on Veterans Day. The president telling Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace he should have made time to visit the cemetery. President Trump says he was busy taking international calls and had just returned from a trip to France, where he paid tribute to the U.S. soldiers killed in World War I. The president vowing to visit Arlington every year from now on. The president's full interview airs tomorrow morning. A substitute teacher claims he is banned from school just for recognizing patriotism.
The PA announcer says, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. So I come, let's go. I say thank you very much, all of you that participated. I appreciate that. And I'm sure all those families that lost loved ones so that we could have the freedoms that we have today would appreciate that too.
The Missouri School District denies the claim and says prior incidents contributed to the decision. A student complained, saying they felt like they were being called out for not standing up.
Yes, they should.
People are collecting 10,000 Christmas cards to send to troops overseas. That's amazing. I love it. One vet says it means a lot to get some holiday cheer while away from home.
Everybody's got their lives back home, and it was just really nice to know that they were thinking about us and took the time out of their day to let us know how they felt, that they supported us and took care of us.
The Phoenix, Arizona American Legion Post currently has about 2,000 cards ready to send.
All right.
And those are your headlines.
Great.
So it's not okay to tell some punk kid to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? It's like ridiculous
He's still
to me.
talking about the last story.
Yeah, I'm stuck on the second to last story. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you're right.
That would have been a
There may
big
have been
deal.
other things, that's what they say, but man.
Listen, when I was in school, I had to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. There were no two ways about it.
Pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stacey Abrams bowing out of the governor's race reluctantly.
Sort of.
Georgia. Kind of, sort of, maybe-ish, but she won't admit that she lost.
Let's be clear. This is not a speech of concession.
He won, but I didn't lose. Why our next guest says Democrats like Abrams are staging the battlefield for future elections.
Plus, believe it or not, Black Friday almost here. Kurt the Cyber Guy is here to break down the best tech deals of the season.
Under the watch of the now former Secretary of State, democracy failed Georgia. Let's be clear. This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. 8 years of systemic disenfranchisement, disinvestment, and incompetence had its desired effect on the electoral process in Georgia.
Democrat Stacey Abrams ending her run for Georgia governor without actually conceding to Republican Brian Kemp.
The candidate who got fewer votes says democracy failed. Well, here to react, the national spokesperson of Congress of Racial Equality, Niger Innis. Good morning, sir.
Hey, Niger.
Good morning.
Niger, I remember back to the end of the 2016 campaign where Donald Trump said, we'll see what happens about the results. And Hillary Clinton decided to tweet out, Donald Trump refused to say he'd respect the results of this election. That is, she said, a direct threat to our democracy. What's changed?
What has changed is that Democrats lost and are not conceding, and somehow that is parlayed as a badge of courage and honor. When what is really going on here is Democrats are setting the stage not so much for 2018, where clearly Abrams in Georgia, Gillum in Florida, Beto in Texas lost, but they're trying to intimidate Republican lawmakers to change voting restrictions or lack thereof in these states, in these critical battleground states, not for 2018, but for 2020.
No, I'm not seeing evidence that there were any voters that Kemp actually went out and disenfranchised. I'm just not seeing that. Is now the precedent being set for Democrats that when they lose elections, they get to say the other side cheated, they stole it. You now have leaders in the movement. You have Senator, Sherrod Brown. You have Hillary Clinton coming out and saying in this particular race in Georgia, well, you know what? If she loses, it's because they stole the election. It's unfair. Is that a precedent that's being set forever now? And how are voters going to take that if that's the new message from the Democratic Party?
Well, I hope voters are not fooled. I mean, look, I represent a organization, Congress of Racial Equality, that has fought for voting rights for decades. And had to come across real voter suppression. And voter suppression is not asking for a picture identification.
Mm-hmm.
That promotes voter integrity. Voter suppression that we dealt with is murder. It is a shotgun. It is a noose, a threat. That's really over 100 years old, that type of voter suppression. That no longer takes place in our country. And for Abrams and Gillum and Hillary Clinton and Sherrod Brown and these types to talk about voter suppression, that, somehow you can't clean the voter rolls, somehow you can't ask for voter identification. I mean, my God, if I want to go get a bottle of wine and use my credit card, I have to show ID. Why should not the franchisement, which is the most important exercise of power in our republic, using a democratic process, why should we not do the same? But again, Democrats are trying to intimidate Republican legislators into caving, and they need to pull up their big boy pants and big girl pants and stand up for voter integrity.
All right, Nigel Innes, thank you for bringing that perspective
so
this morning about how far the country has come. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Are you ready? Are you excited? Democrats are set to take over the House. They already know what they're going to do first. They talked about investigating the president. Now they're going to raise your taxes. Their plan, the details.
Boy. Plus, believe it or not, Black Friday is almost here, and Kurt the Cyber Guy is here to break down the best tech deals of the season. Coming up next.
To California, talking to the press. Watch.
The first responders and FEMA, they have been incredible. The firefighters have been unbelievably brave. Some of the stories I've read last night, unbelievably brave. Well, we haven't been briefed yet. The CIA is going to be speaking to me today. We have not been briefed yet. As of this moment, we were told that he did not play a role. We're going to have to find out what they have to say. Say it? Have you submitted your answers to the special counsel? No, we do that next week. They're all done. Yeah. Well, we're taking a look at it. We also have a great ally in Saudi Arabia. They give us a lot of jobs. They give us a lot of business, a lot of economic development. They have been a truly spectacular ally in terms of jobs and economic development. And I also take that, I'm president. I have to take a lot of things into consideration. So we will be talking with the CIA later and lots of others. I'll be doing that while I'm on the plane. I'll be speaking also with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. We have not been talking about it. We have not been talking about it. We'll see. No, it's not under consideration. We are looking, always looking. And whatever we can do for Turkey, and frankly, countries that we get along with very well, we're having a very good moment with Turkey. As you know, he gave Pastor Brunson back last week, and we appreciate that. We are doing very well with Turkey. I get along very, very well with the president. He's a friend of mine. He's a strong man, he's a tough man, and he's a smart man, but he's a friend of mine, and whatever we can do, we'll do, but that is something that we're always looking at. But at this point, no. What? We haven't even talked about it. Yeah, we have a tremendous military force on the border, on the southern border. We have large numbers of people trying to get into our country. I must say the reason it's increased so much is because we're doing so well as opposed to the rest of the world. And if you look at south of our border, it's not doing so well. But regardless, we have millions of people online to get into our country legally, and those people have preference. They have to have preference. They've been waiting for a long time. They've done it legally. So we have a lot of things happening, but we have a great military force on the southern border. We're not letting people into our country illegally, and we're not doing a release. We'll do a catch, but we're not doing releases. So if they think they're going to be released into our country like in the old days, like for years and years, they catch and release. We're not releasing. They don't get released. What? As long as necessary. They built great fencing. They built a very powerful fence, a different kind of a fence, but very powerful. The fence is fully manned. Nobody gets through. And when they're caught, they're not released. And it's very interesting. I said it this morning. They come up and they're talking about all their great fear, all their problems with their country, but they're all waving their country's flag. What is that all about? If they have such fear and such problems and they hate their country, why do we see all the flags being waved? For Guatemala, for Honduras, for El Salvador, we're seeing flags all over the place. Why are they waving flags? This has nothing to do with asylum. This has to do with getting into our country illegally. And we have to know who wants to come into our country. Okay? No, I don't question his loyalty at all. He is 100% loyal. It was a phony story. I doubt they had any sources. A typical New York Times phony story. Mike Pence is 100%. Not even a doubt about it in my mind. He's been a trooper. He's been with me from as soon as I won the primary. I mean, he was the one I chose, and I could not be happier. And I don't question his loyalty at all. He's already been tested in many ways. Mike Pence is a terrific person. That was a phony story written by the New York Times, who, by the way, never called me for a comment. How do you do a story like that? See, it's fake news, and that's what breaks up a country. Fake news. How do you do a story like that and you don't call the principal? I would give them a quote. I would say it's not true, and that's the end of their story. But they don't do that. They write, and then they make up sources. They may speak to one person, but they make up phony sources. They make it like you write a novel. Have you ever written a novel? That's the way a lot of the news stories are written. That's why I call it fake news. It's fake, and it's a very bad thing for our country. It's very dangerous. Mike Pence is 100%. They should retract that story. But you can't do that story without calling me for a quote. Or you could call Sarah Huckabee and say, could I get a quote? And here she is. Could I get a quote from the president? I would be happy to give a quote. I would be happy. And you know what the quote would be? Mike Pence is 100%. Now you can't do your story. So that's why they don't like calling me for a quote.
So why are you supporting Nancy Pelosi?
I would help Nancy Pelosi if she needs some votes. She may need some votes. I will perform a wonderful service for her. I like her. Can you believe it? I like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she's tough and she's smart, but she deserves to be Speaker. And now they're playing games with her, just like they'll be playing with me. It's called presidential harassment. The president of your country is doing a great job, but he's being harassed. It's presidential harassment. Well, in a way, her own party's harassing her. There's nobody else should be speaking. Now, that doesn't mean for 100 years, but certainly they should start off with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. And I already have a lot of votes. If she needs any votes, if she asks me, I will give her the votes to put her over the top. Well, I saw Tom Reed as an example. He's a fine man, a congressman. I would call him a moderate. I'm not saying I get him from the super conservative side, but maybe I even get him from there. But I don't imagine she'd need too many. But whatever number of votes she needs, if it's 50 or 10 or 2 or 1, she's got them from me, automatic. So tell our opposition they're wasting their time.
Are you okay with the shutdown if you don't get funding for your border wall?
We're talking about the border wall. We're talking about quite a big sum of money, about $5 billion. And I think probably if I was ever going to do a shutdown over border security, when you look at the caravan, when you look at the mess, when you look at the people coming in, this would be a very good time to do a shutdown. I don't think it's going to be necessary because I think the Democrats will come to their senses. And if they don't come to their senses, we will continue to win elections. You know, we won the Senate. You do recognize, right? That means all the judges that I'm getting approved will now be easier because we actually picked up, which is historic, we picked up 2 seats in the Senate. We went from 51-49 to 53-47. That's a tremendous difference. And these are senators I really like. That's also a difference. Thank you all very much. Thank you. What?
That was President Trump answering questions from the press before boarding. And here's live pictures of Air Force One as it heads out to California.